This is a story about the time I left home. The night before I left, I was packing everything I owned into garbage bags and stuffing them into my '97 Nissan Sentra. It was still dark outside while I was making the final preparations to the car, as my groggy and disinterested family watched from the front lawn. By 5 a.m., I started my car and drove away from everything I had known. I drove all day and long into the night. It was nearing 3 a.m., but I was determined to reach Texas. The radio was softly fading in between advertisements and static. My mother was beside me, holding the handle above the passenger door while her other hand was covering her eyes. She's always been convinced that she'll die in a fiery wreck. So while she was cowering in fear, holding on to the useless handle above her, she was attempting to make small talk to help me stay awake. At this point, I had been driving for over 20 hours on little to no sleep. The only thing I could see was the small bit of road lit up by my headlights. I had been the only car on the road for hours, and my eyes became fixated by the steady repetition of street lines coming closer and disappearing behind me. When you're extremely sleep-deprived, and adrenaline is the only thing keeping you alert, because you know, if you doze off, your mother's premonition about her fiery death will come true, your mind starts to do funny things. A truck driver once told me it's called road hypnosis. The road in front of me seemed to pulsate, and I hadn't realized it yet, but everything had gone completely silent. Emerging in the distance, I saw a giant factory covered in small orange lights. It looked like a city on fire, burning in silence. It was the most terrifying and beautiful thing I've ever seen. Somehow, through the silence, I heard my mother's muffled screaming. She was screaming my name and telling me to pull over. I snapped out of my trance and looked at her, confused and annoyed. I didn't understand why she was acting so hysterical. She told me that for the past 30 minutes, I stopped responding, and my eyes grew wide and stared vacantly ahead. She told me that she had been trying to get my attention for a while, but was too afraid to touch me while I was driving, so her voice steadily grew louder, which I couldn't hear until she was screaming. Still panicking, she told me that we had to pull over and get some sleep. I told her that I could make it to Texas. I still felt like I wasn't far enough away from where I started. My mother's voice started to become more shrill as she demanded that we stop. So, to avoid her screaming at me again, I pulled over at a rest stop 10 minutes from the Texas state line. There was nothing around the rest stop for miles, besides an expanse of dead scrub grass, and nobody but semi-trucks for company.